Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you. In today's edition of Team Selection, I've got a great one for you, including what transfers I'm making, benching dilemmas across the goalkeeping, defensive, midfield, and forward departments, and specific player insights to with. And not just that, well, regarding the video, yes, just that, but I've had a late season surge in terms of enthusiasm, and I'm really enjoying producing content, specifically this game week. And I imagine that your continued support has something to do with that. So for that, thank you very, very, very much. And if you would like to keep that up, I'd be ever so grateful in the form of a like on this video and equally a subscribe if you have not already. Like I said yesterday, I'm sure the good karma will follow in suit. If you still got any questions from everything you need or this video, then drop them in the comments below. But with nothing else needing to be said, let's hop into it. Just like I did last week, as opposed to having the goalkeeping and defensive department separate, we shall have them together just because there are so many factors that intertwine with each other. The main one being the Arsenal defense. And we will start with the goalkeeping department. And you will see that David Raya, for the first time in a very long time, finds himself on my bench in place of Alphonse Areola, who's away to Manchester United. I think following their loss against Paris Saint-Germain, especially because at least in the second tie, especially in the second tie, I thought they were the better team on the night. I think they'll be rather lethargic isn't the right word, but rather uninspired compared to what they could have been should they have beaten PSG and just wanting to keep that momentum going. I think they might feel a little bit defeated, word that I was searching for. And as such, I think Liverpool could take them, not just because Arsenal may feel defeated, but also on the flip side, I think there's a little bit of a rivalry certainly brewing here. I think there's been one there. Maybe following a few comments in Arteta's press conference. As of late, I think there's a surge in this rivalry. And I think Liverpool, especially after losing at Chelsea, and the fact that it's been a good week or two since the title has been wrapped up, I think now they'll start to kick back into gear, at least for this game as well. For example, I doubt McAllister's been on the booze. I doubt Szoboszlai will be benched. I doubt Gravenberch will be benched. You get your entire midfield back, and therefore you don't see the same performance level against Chelsea. This is also the first game since they won the title that they're going to be back at Anfield. So all of those variables, I can see Liverpool scoring. And as such, he remains on the bench. And you will also see Jakub Kiwior on the bench. Now, he's actually closer to the starting 11 than you may anticipate, because I do still recognise that Arsenal are one of the better defences in the world. He's also got good set-piece threat. And as such, do I really want no piece of Arsenal defence away, even if it's away at Anfield? Potentially not. So he could potentially come in for Munoz, because I do think that the Spurs scored, just given the way that Palace have been playing. But on the flip side, Munoz has got a high ceiling. It begs the question, do I really need to take that risk when the player has such a feeling? So that is something that I will continue to ponder in time for solving your problems. The other two are probable locks. I mean, Guardiola away to Southampton is a definite lock. And then Neco Williams at home to Leicester. I mean, there's some attacking upside there. I actually think, even though he's right-footed, he's better on the left side when it comes to getting attacking returns. He's obviously just got one from that Murillo assist. But if you look at the way he strikes that ball compared to how he's striking, not just in terms of like shooting, but also like crossing from the right-hand side to the left, I honestly think this could suit him a little bit better. And as such, I'm quite comfortable playing him, if not for a clean sheet, maybe like a slight chance at an attacking return. But it's one of the better fixtures in the week, right? So he should probably be there. Guardiola will almost definitely be there. And then I assume Conte just stays bench. I think away to Bournemouth is tough. Very tough to keep a clean sheet. And not many teams, if at all any, do that. So yeah, I think overall, relatively simplistic, apart from the Arsenal dilemma, of course. Moving on to the midfield, you will see my first acquisition here, and that is in the form of Bryan Mbeumo. But maybe you might be surprised as who is departing, and it is Bukayo Saka. Now, I'm not in the situation which some of you are, whereby I can sell one of Morgan Rogers, Ismail Assar, or a player around that price point and upgrade to Bryan Mbeumo. A lot of you already have him, so I guess the guys you're upgrading to aren't quite as expensive. But in my case, I simply didn't have the funds to do that. Now, there were two possible macro level routes for myself. Either sell Saka or Salah, or sell Ismail Assar / Morgan Rogers, and then sell probably one of Mateta or Isak, and then fund it through a hit. I decided for now that this is the only transfer I'm going to make. And look, I could make another one if I'm really bullish on someone like Cunha, who I really like the prospect of, and even Palmer potentially. As things stand, Bryan Mbeumo will be coming in for Bukayo Saka. I think with Saka, obviously, he'll be as I said with Arsenal, they'll be a bit deflated, uninspired, maybe a bit defeated away at Anfield. I think Liverpool will certainly be up for it as well. And it just doesn't really seem to be going his way at the moment. Hasn't been getting too many returns. I don't think his assist rate is going to be as good as usual, just given as good as it was in previous parts of the season. There's no Havertz. Predominantly, there's no Havertz, and they're just not getting that bit of luck, and the ball's just not going in the net. They don't have a recognised nine for him to essentially feed and generate assists that way. Odegaard's not scoring goals like he did in the season past. For all of those reasons, I personally was okay departing with him, or parting ways with him. And the fact that they've got Newcastle next, right? That's another tough fixture. Eddie Howe's done such a good job against Mikel Arteta this season, arguably better than anyone else has done. And then if I really want him back in 38, I'll get him back. But for the next two, I think where there's limited upside, or even if the upside is present, and I think it's fair to say that the upside is present, what isn't present is that floor, given the fixtures. And I'm not really looking to tango with that when Brian Mbeumo is such an attractive option. Hence why he comes into the side. And in terms of his analysis specifically, I discussed him in quite some depth in EYN as my favorite captaincy option. So you can imagine who I'm captaining. And he had to come in the side for me. You will notice that Morgan Rogers is benched. I think going away to Bournemouth the entire season has been really tough. And I don't really expect that to change. So whilst he could return, I'm more than happy to keep him there and exploit the stylistic matchup that Sarr has against this Spurs lineup. They're obviously they're playing on an AstroTurf on Thursday. The squad depth is slightly dwindling, obviously. Solanke's got a bit of an issue. I don't know if he's back. Madison's out for the rest of the season. I don't think Son will be there either. So slowly it's dwindling. Then you've got another match on in conditions that you're not used to. I think with such a tight turnaround. And then if they get through the Europa League final to actually go and focus on, you've got Sarr right there. And if not, they'll probably be quite deflated as well, similar to Arsenal. So, I'm quite happy to play Sarr. I also think that he played quite well compared to Eze and Mateta against Forest. People will say, oh, Eze hit the bar and Eze scored. But overall, performance-wise, especially in the first half, I thought Eze was quite poor compared to Sarr. So I think returns are coming for him. They've obviously come in the FA Cup, but in the Premier League, I do think they could come this game. And then Bowen will maybe talk about a little bit more in the captaincy section because I did ponder it. And Salah, if I'm not selling him, then I kind of have to start him, right? I don't have to, but I think it makes a lot of sense to. And that is the completion of the midfield. We'll go on to the forwards because while some of them have been sold, there is some things to discuss about how they could have been sold and my individual prospects on them. And hopefully that can help with potentially selling or not selling them in your team. Starting with Omar Marmoush. Now, there have been some questions about his expected minutes. With my interpretation of Haaland's being far closer to 0/10 than anything else, I think he gets the nod. And if anything, he's more of a captaincy option than a sell in my book. So he stays. However, the other two, in terms of being on the chopping block, yeah, they're there or thereabouts. And I think it certainly warrant some discussion in terms of being sold. We'll start with Mateta. I think the prospect for him, as I discussed with Sarr, is quite good this week. And that's what's really making him stay in this team and in the starting lineup as opposed to anything else. Because when you look at the FA Cup final date and how that interacts with the date of the fixture in 37, and then you consider that they're away at Anfield on party day, which I imagine Liverpool will want to go well in game week 38, and the fact that he's not in great form, and the fact that he's not on penalties anymore, all of a sudden it's not that attractive. I do think, however, for this week, it's a good game. And in my situation, where I don't have an extra free transfer, I don't think it makes sense to hit him out, especially when Brian Mbeumo is the priority. Now, if you weren't in my situation, if you did have another free transfer available to yourself, whilst it's a good prospect, I think if you want to go 1 week early, but maybe you just don't like him for this week, then go. Or maybe you just like Cunha a lot more, you like Whistler a lot more, go. I think it's absolutely fine. I also consider the sale of Alexander Isak because I think he does play an informed Chelsea, and then he's away at the Emirates, which is never going to be that easy of a game, right? Even though Arsenal have been conceding more goals through their injuries primarily as of late. And with that in mind, and the fact, again, that he's a cash cow, so maybe if you want in my situation, him to Cunha, go and get Palmer for one of the mids as well, great. But I think considering they have so much on the line, and the fact that I don't have another free transfer, and Mateta's lack of utility in 37 to 38, I think I just stick with him to the end of the season. He has been the best striker in the league this season, and whilst not in the best of form, he can always turn it on in just a moment in a way that pretty much everyone else aren't. So for that reason, I think he just stays for the rest of the season. If you did want to sell him, I'd be a little bit careful. I don't love it. I get it. I really do, and I toyed with the idea, but I don't love it. I just think he's a little bit too good. to pass up at this moment in time, unless you're like really bullish on Mateta this week and then whoever you're replacing Isak with, and you're happy to go with Isak for the next two when Mateta's utility in those 2 weeks is significantly lower as well. So that explains my views on the forwards. And again, I've spoken about Matthias Cunha a few times. Really like him. Think he's a good option. And now we can go on to captaincy. You may have guessed that the armband belongs to Bryan Mbeumo this game week, not just resultant of what I said about him in this video, but also the fact that he was my number one captaincy choice, and that too by some way, and the flattery that I sent his way in everything you need. He has not got a return for me this season so far. He's been in my side for 2 weeks this season, got a return in neither game, but this is the week that it changed, and I finally get some points from Bryan Mbeumo, and he finally stopped hurting my rank in the form of a haul away at Ipswich. And then, in terms of the vice captaincy, you obviously see on Jared Bowen. I just fancy him to do quite well away at Manchester United. I could give it to Marmoush, I could give it to Salah, but at the moment, I think it will stay with Bowen. It's not that big of a deal because you expect Bryan Mbeumo to play. If not him, then yeah, maybe Salah or Marmoush. But I do really like Bowen. So for those of you who potentially are considering benching him, I absolutely wouldn't. Final words on captaincy are that I personally have Mbeumo out front by quite a bit. I think especially with his ceiling over Wood and the fact that Brentford are in way better form, I think he's better than Chris Wood, whilst Wood is still good. And I said that in everything you need. I think De Bruyne you're gambling with a little bit more. He could do really well and explode, but I think you're gambling a little bit more there as opposed to like the Bowen, as opposed to the Mbeumo or even Chris Wood shout. So that's that. I have one last thing to show you before we wrap up, and then we can indeed head off, and I will see you the day after for solving your problems. I thought that there was an important point to bring up with Jan Wissa and the Everton defence, symbolised by Jordan Pickford. And in relation to Morgan Rogers, there was something that didn't quite fit in the team selection bit that I thought I would bring up here, and we'll start with him. And it is just a very quick thing. I have seen certain spots where I think it is okay to sell him, and all I wanted to say with relation to Morgan Rogers, I think it would be beneficial for some to be a little bit more open-minded to the prospect of selling him, because yes, he has a depleted Spurs in the game week after this, and yes, it's United way after that, but this game week, I don't think it's so great. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's so great. And then in the 2 weeks after, I don't necessarily trust him/Villa enough to guarantee that I'm going to get a haul. I think the floor is pretty decent across those two games as a combination, but the haul, not so much. And in this late stage of the season where you probably don't have to make too many tweaks to your squads, just given how they're structured, I think where there's opportunities that lie in the midfield, go and take them, honestly, and don't be worried about EO or the fact that like he's done quite well in the past this season because he hasn't hauled that big, right? So if you just miss like a 5 point or even less like a blank, then there's a lot of upside to be gained elsewhere. And I just think that for some, having a more open-minded perspective about that would be great. I also caught myself being a little bit close-minded about him, hence what actually prompted the discussion as well. With Wissa, I think he has been coupled with Bryan Mbeumo as an FPL asset in terms of the same standard, and I don't think as an FPL asset they're at the same standard. So again, like if you are potentially doing that unconsciously, I'll just check yourself to see if that's the case, because I still think that Bryan Mbeumo's out in front of him, and that's reflected, I guess, in the points tally. It is reflected in the point tally. And finally, I think it's okay to play Everton defense this week. I'm not going to go into this in solving your problems too much, I imagine, but I think it's okay to play Everton defense this week. I mean, they're a good defense, and they're away at Fulham, which honestly isn't like the worst game ever, especially because Fulham haven't been scoring goals for fun as of late. So that was just like one thing I wanted to include. Should your defense not be good as you would like it to be? And that is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed. If you did, do go and drop a like on the video now, and equally subscribe now. Go and click that button if you have not already. Whether you are a new viewer or an older one around here, and I'm not talking about age, but rather how long you've been a friend of the channel. And that is all for the team selection. If you have a question for solving a problem, do leave it in the comment section below. As an example, I had not thought about adding a Marmoush captaincy section for solving your problems last week. It was requested on team selection, so I did it, and thankfully it went quite well, and I imagine it talked some people out of the Marmoush captaincy. So you're not only helping yourself, you're helping me, and you're helping many others as well. So if you do have a question, definitely go and ask it, because it's likely you're not the only one. And you could say that about so many in life. I shall see you very soon for solving your problems. I look forward to it, and have a wonderful day in the meantime. Goodbye.